Nice Les Paul. Want to do a preliminary evaluation, see what it needs. I'm doing a setup, and strings are old. I know that. May not have a lot of brightness. My first impression is it seems like the action is pretty high. Especially on the low E string, it's getting a little bit tough to fret those notes. So it's a beautiful sounding guitar, even with the old strings, etc., and the action setup kind of like that. We'll check intonation as received, make all the measurements on neck straightness and relief, and etc. Try and get it close to factory specs and see the playability after that. It's going to be in really good shape after. I've checked for any kind of control noise, nothing on the volumes, nothing on the tone controls. I've got this Les Paul on the bench. I've confirmed the high action. I've made all the measurements. Got everything, incoming measurements made. I've already made some preliminary adjustments. So I've taken steps to get that pretty close to where it should be. More of like a 10 thousandths gap at the 7th fret. This is an important step. I've removed the strings after doing a preliminary truss rod adjustment. With no string tension on here, this isn't the true shape of the neck as it's going to be when it's strung up. So it'd be nice to know if I need to do any filing of frets, any fret dress, how this sits. And I've actually got a bit of a high spot in through here, so I've actually got a reverse bow at this point. And one way to simulate string tension is I can actually put weight back in this area on the guitar. About between 5 and 10 pounds can usually sort of bring you very close to the strung up deflection of the neck. I've got the fingerboard all masked off on this Les Paul. Try and get true up the fret profile. So I've got my sanding block with 400 grit emery or silicon carbide. We're going to try and knock off on the treble and mid side primarily. Get things trued up nicely. Well, for a little update on how things are going well. This is probably going to look like hieroglyphics to most people, but let's see. So on the treble side, I had a gap of 1/1000th inch or more, but 1/1000th of an inch would go under the 2nd fret and the 12th through the 22nd. So after the work I've done so far, I've really just got the 2nd, the 7th through 9th. And then you hit again on the 22nd. Let's see, the before on the middle part of the neck, right down the center here, 1/1000th of an inch would go basically from frets 2 through 7 and from frets 12 through 19, and then also 22. Now only frets 2 and 14 through 20 can I actually put a shim under there when I've got the straight edge lying on. So it's getting close to trued up there. And on the bass side, what I've found is I had, let's see, 1/1000th of an inch would go from fret 2 to 18, and now I've got from fret 2 to 7 and then 22. So I'm not completely thrilled with the status of this guitar. You remember the original second pass effort here was we had fret fuzz. Still got a little bit. There may actually be a contribution from the nut slot depth. We're going to check that out by retaking those measurements. Now I found that the squareness of the nut slot on this Les Paul is pretty good. I clean things up, check for squareness using a file and then sighting against a gauge. It looks pretty square. So I need to continue working the nut. I've taken the nut blank down to where we've got it pretty close on thickness. It slides in pretty well. And what I'm trying to do now is really guarantee that the squareness of the bottom compared with the surface that'll go up against the fingerboard will give me, by using just a little bit of glue here and underneath, will give me a good seating into the nut slot, and that'll help sustain and tone, etc. It all can be a bit confusing, but you can sight along the nut as it's in the slot, and I've got my gauging set up here so that I can measure across. I am finally finished with this Les Paul. I've got it right where I want it. Came in with really high action. 3 or 4 setups and I couldn't get things right in that there was a fair amount of acoustic fret buzz persisting. Had to change out the nut. When I put in the new nut, I very carefully worked it down to make sure I didn't go too far. Got the nut slot depths where I wanted them. Last breakthrough on getting this to be the guitar setup that I wanted for this Les Paul was to really carefully check the fit of the nut into the nut slot. The angle at the bottom of the nut, the way it interacts with the slot, very important. You want a nice tight contact there. You want good intimate contact to the fingerboard as well. So it's a tough problem to have that angle reproduced on the nut. You got to get it right. Then you got to get the dimensions right. This thing is in spec. Playability is superb. Action's much lower than it was when it came in. If the customer wants to raise the action a little bit, he can do so with impunity. It'll still be pretty easy to play. This is like a gunslinger low action here. Tone is beautiful, playability is great, nothing's fretting out. Fret rocker's got all dead, no rocking, up and down the neck, any place on it. If you remember back to some of the problems I found with the neck, man, I didn't know I was going to get here for sure, but it worked out great. Let's give her a little spin here.